What is going on, everybody, and happy Monday and Omega Red Day, and that's exactly what I have come to talk to you all about. Now, for those of you who will be unlocking Omega Red today, I want to tell you and share my reasoning behind why I won't be bothering to gear him. I think for the most part, I will leave him at a semi-reasonable state, but I won't be investing any orange gear into him at this point. Neither will I be gearing the entire team to any significant degree beyond what I already have done on some of my characters like Sabretooth. And that's because of the timing of this event. I discussed this a bit on Friday, and I think, but with the knowledge of patch 5.8 coming out on Wednesday, this comes at a very awkward time for Omega Red, and the first time I've ever seen a legendary character come out on the same week as a patch release. So hopefully by the end of the video, I have at least given enough reasons why I think you should be cautious of over-investing in this character and this team for at least right now. So without further ado, let's get this roller coaster started. Alright, so we're going to start off things here in the roster window with Omega Red, and we need to talk about Omega Red in terms of what kind of value he does or doesn't have in the various game modes in the game. Now, obviously, he is a war character. Weapon X is a war-based team, so first and foremost, Alliance War is where you're going to use him. And if any of you are followers of my channel, you kind of know that, you know, war is not something that I'm very hardcore about. It's not something that I take all that seriously, and the reason why that is because, you know, the reward differences between winning and losing for me just does not have enough value to really kind of make you want to level these characters. You know, there was something else I wanted to say, but, you know, it's not good enough. You know, if the rewards were significantly better, or it gave me something else other than what they had now, you know, since they did the updates to war, I still didn't really change any of my behavior when it came to leveling or gearing or taking war seriously. So for that matter, you know, this is why I already had Weapon X sort of on the back burner in this case. And the only reason why I was considering this in the beginning at all was because of how frustrating Heroes for Hire as a team is. And I'm sure over the last, I don't know, especially since Shang-Chi was released, I'm sure you guys have seen how frustrating this team can be, how annoying it is to have to fight them. And you know, I've flipped my you know, my table, I've thrown my phone, you know, a whole bunch of times trying to fight this team, and you know, having to resort to having to use Infinity Watch to beat them. The difference is that things have kind of changed and are changing with Wednesday and patch 5.8 around the corner, and the main reasons for this are the Eternals characters. So the first thing I want to say is that we have Cersei most likely coming out on an offer release on Wednesday. Her event campaign going to be not too far behind. She's also a controller character, much like Omega Red. So in terms of gearing up, you'll have to be a bit careful if you're wanting to gear Omega Red up. Not to mention that, you know, to gear to max, let's say level 80, you know, 85, you know, to get to level 80 would cost you about 10 million gold, and to go to 85 would be about 12 to 13 million gold, I believe, with everything included, you know, the upgrades and all that. So that's a lot of gold that you have to consider before, you know, simultaneously, basically, that Omega Red will be released at the same time as Cersei. Now, whether or not you buy an offer or unlock her early, that's a whole nother can of worms, but the fact is that it just comes at a very awkward time. Like I mentioned in the intro, that I think that had he come out last week, that would have given you a little bit more time to save gold for Cersei and the Eternals characters that are coming, the duo that are coming up pretty soon, who are way more important than what Omega Red is, in my opinion. So let's finish off by going through, you know, some of the game modes, just as an example. So where I have heard that he is actually not too bad is in Dark Dimension 4 Legendary. I don't have access to the test servers myself, but from what I understand from some of the people who have done it and from people who have watched the video, I have not watched every content creator's videos, but I have heard that he does perform very well in the Dark Dimension 4 Legendary lanes. And probably, you know, if you happen to have unlocked him by like level 75, I would imagine he does very well in Dark Dimension 3 Global, but not necessary to actually have in order to clear that. Just makes it easier. From what I have heard, that you could stick him on auto with some other legendaries in Dark Dimension 4 Legendary and just have a blast with him. And that's great, but you know, for a lot of us who have probably already gone through that, doesn't make him a necessary requirement in order to actually complete that. You know, there are other ways to clear it. There are other characters. It's been done before Omega Red. That being said, you know, because I will unlock him, and hey, great on me. I guess I have 6 reds, although I'm only going to activate 5 yellow. You know, I will probably end up using him for Dark Dimension 5 Legendary, but the time that I get to Dark Dimension 5 Legendary, there's going to be another Legendary character out, most likely, and I don't see myself getting to that point, which is at the very end of Dark Dimension 5 for, like, I'm just going to guess, you know, some ballpark of, like, 4 to 6 months, so, like, the second Omega Red will probably have already come to pass, and at that point, you know, it doesn't really matter how fast you get him for that reason. So it really depends on where you are. If you have a chance to get him at all, you know, I imagine that most of the people unlocking him are going to be people in the Dark Dimension 4, or even have already cleared Dark Dimension 4 kind of stage of the game. You know, if you happen to get him in the Dark Dimension 3 stage, 75 to level 75 to level 80, you're doing really great. You know, and so you'll have to decide for yourself whether or not you feel that's worth it. In terms of raids, unfortunately, he just doesn't hit the mark there. You know, you can't... I was hoping that maybe you could get rid of Kitty Pryde or Iceman to use for Doom Raid 1 or Doom Raid 2, but, you know, from all of the testing that's been gone on for Doom Raid 2, I've heard that that's not the case, that you won't be able to remove Omega Red in order to use him in... Or, sorry, remove Kitty Pryde in order to use Omega Red in Doom Raid 2 because of how important her passive is for the survivability of the Astonishing X-Men. So that part's a little bit unfortunate because I was hoping, hey, maybe you get some outside of war usage for him. And that's the most important thing about this character and also this team, is how much value do they have outside of just war. Doc Ock is a pretty good example to compare to Omega Red, which was around this time last year. Doc Ock had quite a bit, I would say, of extra value. He was using basically a hybrid legendary soup for Arena. He, you know, made Ebony Maw's offense down. You know, you wouldn't have to worry about that because of the immunity that his passive gave to the entire team. Had value in Dark Dimension, had value in Raids, still has value in Raids. I don't think Omega Red has that, unfortunately, and I think what could have made the difference there is if Omega Red was a tech character. I was really hoping that he would have a dual trait of mutant and tech, because that would have made a significant difference in terms of his overall viability in things like Doom Raid 1 and Doom Raid 2 tech. But unfortunately, he's stuck in the mutant lane. There's not a lot of flexibility right there, right now, with the Astonishing X-Men having to be used. So we've talked about raids, we've talked about Dark Dimension, we've talked about war. Really, the last thing left is Arena. Now, Arena right now is obviously Infinity Watch versus Infinity Watch, or Kess Watch versus Kess Watch. We have the 2 Eternal duos coming out pretty soon. I think that's bound to change. Now, is Omega Red going to be used in that sort of hybrid soup? Maybe, you know, but is he going to be essential in that to take out Infinity Watch or whatever you're trying to do with the Eternals? Probably not. Is he going to make a difference if you're using a mirror match of Eternals versus Eternals and someone has Omega Red and someone doesn't? Maybe. I mean, the trauma debuff is pretty interesting. We'll have to wait and see whether or not that makes a difference, but part of me doesn't think, you know, and it really depends on how they play, how the AI plays the character on the defense rather than you playing it as in the offense. So I don't know where Omega Red's going to fit in there for the Arena, if he is at all, or if you even need him. A lot of the footage that we've seen with the Eternals fighting Infinity Watch in the Arena was like the Eternals duo plus New Warriors. You could, presumably, you might be able to do something like, people are using like Loki and New Warrior in Cloak and Dagger, you know, so you could do that for the speed bar with the other 2. Maybe you could use Capsam. Hell, maybe you could use some of the Infinity Watch. Maybe you could use Castro. Like, I imagine there's going to be some flexibility in what characters you're using, but a lot of what we've seen so far is New Warriors or Cloak and Dagger with the Eternals duo. So I don't know if Omega Red's going to fit in there, but does that justify having to spend, you know, 10 to 13 million gold and getting him to what realistically you're going to need to get about level 85, you know, for Endgame Arena, for Doom, you know, not Doom Raid, sorry, I don't know why I mentioned that, but Endgame Arena, you know, is it worth that 13 million gold for just War and, you know, Endgame Arena? And that's not to talk about the rest of the team, you know, so let's do that. I have them up at the top. Silver Samurai, unfortunately, is what I think a giant miss. Just like Omega Red, you're not really using him anywhere else. He is a global mutant. And, you know, he has the exact same traits as Omega Red. He's not legendary, so you can use him in Dark Dimension 4 Global if you really want to. I just don't think he's worth, again, spending that sort of 10 to 13 million gold to get him all the way up to level 80, level 85, or whatever you want to get him to. You know, I put some investment into him. I got him to level 65, 6664. You know, that doesn't cost a lot. I think that's around 2 to 2.5 million. It's not a significant chunk. But to add on an extra 10 million for some of these characters, you know, it's not a good time right now to do that. You know, whether it's Silver Samurai, even Lady Deathstrike, you might still be hurting for those of you who may have, you know, put in that 10 to 13 million gold to get Lady Deathstrike up to level 80 or 85, you know, to use in Doom Raid tech. And while I think she has some value there, I think that people are just kind of squeezing tech for as much as they possibly can because it's a crap lane, at least in Doom Raid 2, and so they're just trying to find some sort of value in these characters outside of war. And for Lady Deathstrike, there's a bit of value there in Doom Raid. Is it significant? I don't think so personally. I think that we're going to see some tech characters come out pretty soon. So I'm going to hold off from actually gearing her up and spending that extra 10 million gold that I would have had to get her to max level and all the gear and the T4s and whatnot. You know, and I'm going to save that for the real characters that I want to take in for game modes like Doom Raid, who we're inevitably going to be seeing over the next handful of months. So there's some rumors that we might not see a tech character until January or February, but regardless, like, I don't think that personally getting Lady Deathstrike up to 85 gear tier 15 is going to significantly improve your chances. Like, it will help, but not enough to justify the resources for a glorified war team that people are trying to figure out where else to use them. So that's Lady Deathstrike, that's Silver Samurai, that's Omega Red. I'm not even going to bother to talk about you know, Wolverine and Sabretooth, because realistically they have even less value than these characters here. Possibly, yeah, no, they definitely have less value than these characters. You know, maybe you could swivel some sort of argument for Silver Samurai and as a tank for Dark Dimension 3 and 4 Global, but other than that, like, I just can't. I can't in good conscience recommend Wolverine or Sabretooth for any of these other game modes that you might consider. So, yeah, we've kind of gone over that. One last thing that I do want to talk about before we end the video is I want to take a look at my character spreadsheet again. I kind of want to share with you guys when you look at sort of war patches and who comes after. So let's jump on over to my spreadsheet to take a quick look. So I really like this spreadsheet because there's a lot of data here that I've been able to keep over the last year and a half or 2 years or so. And so we're here at patch 5.7, which is the Weapon X patch, came out on September 28th. And we have a war patch. Who is next? Well, we have 5.8 coming on Wednesday, and we have the Eternals duo and Dormammu. I'm not going to really talk at length about Dormammu because realistically nobody's going to get him next patch. It's going to take like forever. You know, by the time that we could scroll back actually and go look at Dr. Doom, who was, I forget what number this was, like patch 4.9 or something like that. It was before 5.0. And then we had Dr. Doom up here. But if we go through some of these characters, and let's look at the sort of the war patches. You could argue, and probably so, that Skilletary was a sort of a war patch here with Red Guardian and Yelena. But who came after Red Guardian and Yelena? Well, I guess Kitty Pryde and Iceman came at the tail end of that same patch, but then we also had Bishop and Jubilee. Two really important characters that came out. Now, they also came out at the same time as White Tiger and Moon Knight. We actually had a lot of war characters in this time period, Multiple Man and Polaris, who also came in patch 5.2 after. We did have Silver Surfer combined in here, so you can kind of see that even though there's some war characters coming out, there's some really other important characters. And I think that these Alliance war characters, you know, that they threw at us were often seen as a distraction for what you really should be doing. You know, if you geared up White Tiger and Moon Knight from patch 5.1, maybe you didn't have the resources or the gold or the training modules or whatever, you know, to put into Bishop, to put into Jubilee. You know, if you geared up Multiple Man and Polaris, maybe you didn't have that you didn't have the gold for Silver Surfer. I know a couple of people who went really hard in Multiple Man and Polaris very early on and were kind of disappointed that they really didn't have too much to do outside of Alliance War. Polaris especially, Multiple Man, you know, you could have made some argument with Dark Dimension City. So, you know, we saw Colleen Wing and Missy Knight, the start of Heroes for Hire here. We did get Kestrel early on, but Colleen Wing and Missy Knight, I think a lot of people did put resources into this because it was the start of this Heroes for Hire insanity. And what came after Heroes for Hire? It was Infinity Watch, a very important arena meta. Phyla-Vell, Moondragon, and Adam Warlock. These all came out right after that. So, lucky for me, I didn't really put in too much investment into Colleen Wing and Misty Knight. You know, again, getting to level 80 and maxing out, or what was max at the time, you know, would have cost you about 10 million gold. And that's a lot of resources. If you did it for both of them, both for Colleen and Misty Knight, that would have been like 20 million gold, plus all of the resources and the gear that the T4s and whatever you had to invest in them. And then boom, you get patch 5.4, the Infinity Watch patch, the really important arena patch, and you might not have had the resources for that. And the reason why I'm talking about this at all is just because the game goes in cycles. So often when you see patches like Alliance War patches, and if you can't really, you know, make a lot of value or find a lot of value in these characters, it's honestly best to probably skip them, because you're gonna find out that afterwards that there's gonna be some other characters coming down the line that are going to be much more valuable to you and to the wider sense of the game. You're going to be using them in more places. You're going to be using them in more than just one game mode, Alliance War. Now, of course, we'll see in the near future, in 2022, when we get Grand Arena, I think, or Grand Tournament, or whatever the name of the game mode is supposed to be, whether or not that shares any sort of connection with Alliance War in terms of game text and things like that. I kind of wondered, you know, are they going to do Grand Arena or Grand Tournament specific text? Is it going to be shared with characters who have Alliance War text? I don't know, and we don't have a lot of information on that, but as things sit currently, you got to really be careful about what I call the Alliance War character traps, because these 3 characters, if you invested any large degree in them, and knowing who we have coming up, who is going to make a significant difference to the meta, to the arena meta, to the Dark Dimension meta, probably everywhere. You're probably going to use them in Doom Raid Mystic alongside the new Warriors. They look really, really strong. And so I feel bad for anyone who maybe spent about 30 million gold or higher or more, you know, to max out Silver Samurai, Lady Deathstrike, and Omega Red in the same patch, and now you're broke because you didn't have that and you didn't save those resources for this coming up patch, which in my opinion is a little bit better. So just a forewarning for you guys, you know, I am going to unlock Omega Red later on today, and I'm not really going to invest much in him. You know, like I said, 65, 6664, I'll try to put him together with my others and see, can I punch down like a weak Heroes for Hire? That would be great. If I could beat a 300 to 400k Heroes for Hire, hey, my job is done, and that's great. I still have my Infinity Watch to beat other high Infinity Watches or other Heroes for Hire, and I think that's what most of my alliance is going to do. I don't know many people, maybe there's a couple people in my alliance that actually invested into these characters, but we're a war casual alliance, and if you guys are similar to me, then I would recommend not to put too much resources into this, and be careful about where you're spending, especially when it comes to largely single game mode characters. You know, you might be able to make some arguments for elsewhere, like I said, Lady Deathstrike for Doom Raid Tech, Omega Red possibly for Arena with the Eternals, but we'll have to wait and see. Otherwise, I would err on the side of caution and kind of save some of those resources. So that's the end of this video, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative, and if it was, please smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see y'all later. Boilon signing out.